You can create some really cool transitions using your motion graphics techniques in After Effects, like this one, this sort of circular, round, radial transition. And this is done with some trim path animations, all within one single shape layer, which is really cool. So let me get out of here and I'll show you that the way that you would use this is you can export it and you can use it in a program like Premiere Pro, or within After Effects, you can line it up so that you have two clips. Right now, I'm just using this puppy and then the drone shot from the video folder, and it cuts from one to the next. Cool, so let's go ahead and create this from scratch. So start a new composition. I'll call this Transition 2. For the width and height, 1920 by 1080. For this, it's very important to make sure that it's the right size for your composition for the video that you're working with. The way that this works is that we go ahead and create one of these sort of reveals of this circle on and then off, and then we duplicate it. So how we do that is by taking our ellipse tool, turning off the fill so that there's no fill. So click the fill text right there, turn the fill to none. Turning on the stroke, so we can play around with the size of this later, and we can change the colors too. So for this one, let's start with sort of like a highlighter green. And then let's just create a perfect circle. So it doesn't have to be too big, that's pretty good. Let's put our anchor point in the middle. So take the anchor point, make sure we select our shape layer, and then drag, and I'm holding the command button down so it snaps to the center. And then let's put this in the center using the align panel of our composition. So to create the trim paths animation, go into the add button under the shape layer, click add, and choose trim paths. And let's move this trim paths into the ellipse by clicking and dragging it into the ellipse. Now open up the ellipse and open up the trim paths. Now you can see if I drag the end percentage, it reveals on or off. So let's go back to our transition, and you can decide if you want it to rotate on counterclockwise or clockwise. If you want it counterclockwise, just set the end to 100%. And then the start percentage set to 100, and then we'll animate the start from 100 to 0. So set a keyframe here at the very beginning for start at 100, and then let's just go to 1 second and animate on to 0. Another thing I want to do is going into the stroke options of this ellipse, I can change the stroke line cap from a butt cap to a round cap. That makes the end of the line round, which I think looks a little bit more fun and a little bit more funky. I'm going to increase the stroke width just like to 50 or so. So now we have this animating on, but we want to have it animate off as well. But for our transition to work, we need to complete this circle before it starts animating off. So the way we're going to have it animate off is the end. So it's going to go from 100 to 0, okay? So here at 1 second, once it animates on, set the end percentage to 100% and set a keyframe, and then go to 2 seconds, and then animate the end percentage to 0. So let's bring this in, and now it animates on and then off. Let's easy ease these, so select all of them, right click, choose easy ease, go into the graph editor, make sure you're on the speed graph, select your keyframes, and then drag the left ones in and the right ones in as well. So now it pops a little bit more, which I just tend to like. So one thing that you can play around with is if you shift the end percentage keyframes to the left, you can get some really cool animations. So it pops on, and while it's popping on, it starts to pop off, which is kind of cool. But because we have to complete the entire circle, basically we need everything to be all the way on before we start revealing to make this transition work. We need it to go to 100% and then start revealing the other way. Okay, so now we have our one ellipse. And then we just basically have to repeat this. So let me show you a quick way to do that. So let's go to 1 second, select your ellipse, and then press Command D, Control D if you're on a Mac, or on a PC rather. Now open up your Ellipse 2 options. This is very important to understand. What we can do is decrease the size of this ellipse, but I don't want to do that under the transform properties. I want to do it under the ellipse path properties. Now let me tell you why. But first, take your ellipse tool, make sure you have the ellipse 2 selected, click the stroke color, and let's just change it to something else, so pink. So now the ellipse 2 is on top of the ellipse 1. If I decrease the size in the transform properties, look what happens. The stroke becomes skinnier as well. I don't want the stroke to become skinnier. I want the stroke to stay the same. If I bring down the size of our path, the stroke stays the same width. So let me zoom in here. And basically what I want to do is I want to decrease the size until it's just barely overlapped, just like so. Cool. So now both of these, if I zoom out again, both of these are animating on. Kind of cool, right? Okay, so let's duplicate this again. Now I know this is a little tedious, but it's going to get quicker as we select ellipse 2 or 3 rather, and let's change the color. Something like maybe like a blue. Go into the path settings, decrease the size until it's barely off. Cool. Okay, so now we have our 3 colors that are repeating. And same here, we had the 3 colors. What I want to do now is group these 3 layers into one group. So by clicking the add button, we can create an empty group and then put these 3 ellipses into this group. So I can take these 3 ellipses, drag them into the group, and now what I can do is duplicate the group. Boom. Mind exploded, right? So let me duplicate the group 1, press Command D. And now if I take the now transform properties of the group, I can scale it down. Whoops, but it's scaling down from the right-hand side. I want to make sure that it's scaling down from the center. So let me make sure that the anchor point of this group itself is in the center. So I see that if I click the group, it has this anchor point over here, which I can click and drag. The problem is that with this anchor point of the group, I can't press the Command key to snap it to the center of this layer. What can help me though is if I bring up the title action safe, so I know exactly where the center of this composition is, because I know that the center of this circle is where the center of this composition is. So again, let's take our pan behind tool. And now for the group, let's put that right in the center, like so. So if we zoom in here as much as possible, you can see, again, using the pan behind tool, I'm going to put it right in the center. Cool. Now, let's see what happens when I scale down. So let's fit 100%. If I scale down the group, now we're talking. So I'm just going to scale it down right there. Cool. So that's going to be group 2. Let's duplicate this one. And for this one, I'm going to make it even bigger. So let's scale up. So now the strokes of these outer circles are a little bit bigger because we are expanding the scale of them and not just the path, but that's okay. So again, I'm just duplicating and until we cover the entire frame. Group 4, group 5. And with group 5, we will be good, except for the center. So see, we have these all coming on. Pretty cool. What I did with the original one is in the very center, I just created one little circle that kind of fades on, right? So instead of just creating a bunch of little circles until it goes small, 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 I created one. Let's just do one more. So let me actually duplicate group 2. So that's going to be group 6, but the most inside one. and then bring up the properties and scale it down. So let me zoom in here. Okay, that's pretty cool. Maybe just a little bit bigger. Now with this one, I'm going to go into ellipse, 3? And I'm going to bring up the stroke size. So I'm going to increase the stroke size. And I'm also going to take down the ellipse path and make it smaller until it's a full circle, like so. And then increase the width of the stroke until it fills that whole circle, like so. So now it animates on like so. Cool. So I hope you got that. Basically what I did was I decreased the size of the stroke path, but I increased the stroke width. So now it's just this very thick stroke that is kind of overlapping itself and becomes that solid circle. So now let's fit up to 100% and see what this looks like. Awesome. So in this original one, the strokes kind of come on at different times, and then they come off at different times as well. The other thing that's happening is the whole thing is rotating. So if I go into our transition, let's close this all down, just rename this transition. If I bring up R for rotation, let's go to 1 second, or let's go to like half a second so you can see what's happening. And if I rotate this, the whole thing rotates. So from the very beginning, I'm going to set a rotation at 0. And then at the very end, I'm going to set a rotation at, let's say, -90. And just see what that looks like. Okay, that looks pretty cool. I like it. Okay, but now I want to stagger each line so it's coming on a little bit one after the other. Okay? So what I'll need to do is play with our keyframes. So I press U to bring up all my keyframes. Now this is going to seem like a lot of work to you, and it kind of is, but basically we have all of our keyframes for the start and then our end over here. So what I want to do is just stagger them one at a time. Now you could be very specific and say you want the middle one going on very first and then the second one going on second. I like it being a little bit more organic. So what I'm going to do is just start from the top. Now, if I zoom into my timeline, you can see a little bit better. If I take, and I don't want my rotation open, so don't worry about this rotation right here. But if I take all of these start keyframes, like this one, except for this top one, and then move it over one frame, that's what I'm going to do. So then I'll take all these other ones except for those top 2, drag them over one frame. Take all of them except for those top 3. So I'm just going through and staggering them all on so each one goes on one frame at a time. Okay, selecting our composition window and the tilde key, I can see that's kind of cool. It starts with the ones on the inside and then it starts from the outside and goes in. And that's just the way that I had the groups layered. So if I press U again and then I open up my contents, you see that group 6 is the one from the very inside. Group 5 is the one on the very outside. Group 1 is the one on the next inside. So that's how I have them staggered. Okay, so now let's press U again. Go to the outside keyframes or the end keyframes. Make sure I can see them all. And this time, let's do the opposite. So taking all the ones on the top except for the one on the bottom, drag in one frame, then continue and do the same. Just leaving the one staggered like so. Kind of a cool piece of keyframe artwork right there. Okay, so here we have everything animate on and then off. Now, if you think this is too fast, what we can do is play with time remapping, or we can select all of these keyframes and then take the last one on the far right and then option click and drag to the right. So maybe we want that, like something like that. Hey, that looks pretty darn cool. Okay, so now we have this transition, and basically how it works is we take our video clips down here, and then we want to, and I can drag my transition to the right a little bit until where you want it to actually appear. And what we want to do is have it all go on, and then right when it all goes on, before it starts revealing, we want to cut this clip. So I can just do Option right bracket, and then take our next shot, say this drone shot, for example, and that's going to be underneath, and that's going to start revealing. So let me just drag this to the left to a point like where I want it. So now it's going to be revealing. So puppy, transition, reveal to our drone shot. Cool. So again, like I mentioned in the lower third project, I'm going to show you how to export projects like this with a transparent background. So if I turn off our puppy and drone, turn on our transparency, you can see that this has a transparent background, which would be important if you want to just take this transition and be able to use over and over and over again in, say, Premiere Pro, rather than having to bring in your two shots into After Effects and exporting it from After Effects. That's a lot of work. I would much rather just have this transition as its own QuickTime file that I can place over any cut that I want in my other video editing application. Cool, but I hope you enjoyed this. It's a very intricate effect, but all in one layer. Isn't that incredible? I think it is. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in another project.